welcome to this cyber video tutorial on working with spool file data in the JMagic program. Spool files are one of the most popular methods for passing variable data to MarkMagic so that it can be printed on your labels and forms. This is achieved by mapping variable fields and data fields to your spool file so that they can display the data on the form. Mapping spool file data requires that you already have a spool file. If you want to follow along with this tutorial, MarkMagic ships with a QSys PRT spool file that can be generated in your user library by opening MarkMagic on your AS400 and executing the call statements command. As you can see, we are starting out with a template for an invoice form. We will need to pull in line items and a grand total for the invoice, as well as company name and address for the mailing address portion of the form. Company name and the first line of the address do not require any additional formatting. In order to add them to our form, we simply need to create a variable text field. To do that, place your text field where you want it on the form and click the Browse button next to the field name. You can either manually enter all of the information about your spool file in order to access it, or you can use the Browse button to select it from a list of all the spool files on your system. Once you see your spool file on the screen, you need only click and drag to select the characters that you want to be a part of this text field. You need to make sure you leave enough room for the entire maximum length of this field, and in our case, the maximum length for the customer name is 25 characters. Now we need to repeat this process in order to capture the data for the street address line 1 on our form. Again, this field will be 25 characters long, and it should be placed exactly one line below the customer name. In order to capture and format the address line 2 correctly, we will need to use data fields. To create the data fields for the city, state, and zip code, the process is the same as it is with the text fields. The only difference is you will not see these fields reflected on your form if they are only held as data fields. To start out, I will make a data field that will hold the city. This is a 15-character field. Next, we will capture the state. This is a 2-character field. And lastly, zip code is a 5-character field. Before we can format this correctly onto our form, we need to add one more data field with the field name of star heading and the value of a comma and a space. Now, when we create our text field and use the name of star link, we will have access to the Linked Fields tab. First, we must list the fields that we want to have in this text field on the right side. So let's begin by grabbing the city. Next, we need to add our comma space field, and we need to make sure that we set the variable length to no, or it will remove the space for us. Next, we have to link our state field. Then, in order to put a space after that before the zip code, we need to link the comma space field again. However, this time we do not want the comma in the text field, so set the starting position to 2, and that will change the length to 1. Lastly, we need to link the zip code field, and then we can press OK. Now that we've finished the address portion of the form, we can start to work on the details section of the invoice. To do this, we're going to use variable text fields like we did for the company name and street address. So let's start by making a text field and place it in the first column on our form. Use the Browse button and then press OK to get to the spooled file viewer. Then highlight and capture the first line of the first column and press OK. You can then rename this field to something descriptive if you'd like. I'm going to use item date and press OK, and you'll need to repeat these steps for each of the other columns on this form. Now that your entire first row has been created, you want to click and drag on the canvas to use the lasso tool and select all of these fields. Go ahead and select the Fields drop-down at the top, go to Alignment, and select Top to line up all these fields in a row. Now go back to the Fields menu and select Copy. Click on your format and roughly the position where you want the copies to be placed, and that will bring up the Copy Fields window. Here we can tell JMagic how many records we want. We won't ever have more than 10 lines in our spool file, so we can fill in 9 copies. We want the columns to be perfectly lined up, so adjust the horizontal offset to 0 and fine-tune the vertical offset to make sure that all of the lines will fit on your form. For us, we're going to use 0.3 inches. Now for the spool file column offset, we want to use 0 since all of our data will be in a vertical line on the spool file. And for the spool file line offset, we want to use 1. This will tell MarkMagic to look immediately in the same vertical position, but 1 line lower for each successive field that we're copying onto our form. Go ahead and press OK, and you'll see all of your additional fields get created on the canvas. The last thing we need to do is create a text field to hold the grand total of the invoice. So go ahead and create your text field, press Browse next to the name, and map the total that appears at the bottom of the record in the spool file. We are now done designing the form, but let's preview it with our spool data to make sure it looks like we want it to and we didn't accidentally cut off any of our fields. Go ahead and click the Print Preview button at the top. Make sure that the spool information is correct and press Preview. You can see we have our properly formatted address in the top right, as well as all of our details lines. You can use the window here to navigate through the records of your spool file to verify that everything was mapped correctly and nothing was cut off when you're using different data than the ones that are on the first record. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you very much.